What's up everyone, my name's Jordan from Rare Data. You might know me as Mac Digi or Lo-Fi Charlie. Those are my producer aliases that I use to produce music under. But today I'm here to talk to you about a software I've developed called Quota Mini. Quota Mini is a dialogue sampling utility that allows you to extract quotes in audio or video format by simply highlighting transcribed text. So I developed this because I needed a solution for myself of sampling dialogue. As a producer, sometimes you want to find a good little quote somewhere from a movie, a TV show, an interview, podcast, what have you. And a lot of times those media sources can be long and drawn out and take you out of your creative flow just to go search for that one piece that you're looking for. So I wanted to develop a tool that could eliminate that whole friction point and just make it much more streamlined to quickly grab out that quote. And that's where Quota Mini comes in. Unlike with traditional samplers, which are based around musicality and transients, Quota Mini focuses on the transcript. It transcribes the dialogue into text where you can then simply highlight it and click a pad to assign it. And from right then and there, you can export it out of the software into your DAW, your video editing software, or your Finder or desktop. So let's go ahead and take a look at the software. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the main workflow and show you all the main features and functionality here to make it easy for you to get started working with Quota Mini. Now, before I get started, I just want to mention we do have a free 3-day trial available on the website getquota.app. That's where you can go to purchase it as well. You'll see links on there to get free 3-day trial. So all you gotta do is click that, input your email address, and we email you a link to download the trial installer. No credit card information, none of that. And Quota Mini is a desktop application for Mac OS only. Hopefully soon we'll be coming out with a version for Windows and maybe even Linux, but for now it's Mac OS, and also it's a one-time purchase. You buy it, you own it. So there's no subscription here, there's no hidden fees, there's no usage cap or transcription minutes with Quota Mini. You simply download it to your computer. Once you've installed and activated it, you can simply run it all completely offline. The transcription models run offline on your local computer, so they harness your own computer's power to transcribe the audio. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. You can see here on the screen already that I have Quota Mini open up. And right down here is what the icon looks like. You go ahead and launch that, and you get greeted with this blank project screen. So this is ready to start a new project, and you'll see this after activation. So let's just go ahead and get started by working into the workflow. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click load a file to begin. And you can see right here we're greeted with two choices: import URL or load file. So import URL, let's say you have a video you posted on your social media. You can simply go grab that URL, paste it into here, this box right here, and click OK, and it will pull it from the social media. But we're not going to walk through that today. I just will say a quick note on it. This is an experimental feature. It's not going to work with all websites, and if you get an error, chances are that video is not going to work. So make sure that you abide by all copyright and local laws regarding copyright when using this feature. But right now we're going to go ahead and load file, and this is going to pull from the local file system here. So here we got our Finder window open now, and I'm going to go to my downloads folder, and I have a video here already ready to go ahead and pull in. So let's go ahead and click open, and now you can see just a second later we get our waveform, and this is one of the main tabs you'll work in. We have this tabbed system up here. And you start out on the waveform tab, but we can go over here to the transcript tab and we can view the transcript. So FYI, the first time you import a file, it's going to say starting transcription up here, and the transcription will fill in once it's complete. And transcription can take some time. It's going to totally depend on which whisper model you're working with, which we'll get to shortly. You can set your default model in the preferences, and you can also rerun transcription through here, which we'll get to that as well. But there's 5 different models. There's tiny through large, And Tiny will transcribe the audio really fast, but it is the least accurate, so you might get a lot of misspelled words or basically transcribing the audio imperfectly. But the larger model that you use, the more accurate you're going to get, but the longer it's going to take to transcribe. But here we already have it transcribed, so let's just walk straight through the workflow. So we've imported our media, so now all we need to do is highlight what we want to chop out. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this first sentence right here and click pad 1. Now you can see here pad 1 is selected. It's now got its own color, and we have a matching colored highlight. If I switch back over to the waveform tab, we can see that there's a colored highlight that matches it right here, showing us a section of the waveform that's being sampled. Now I can simply click play, or just click the pad, or press a MIDI pad, which we'll get to the MIDI setup here in a moment. But I'll go ahead and press play.
Feeling, right? You're spending hours scrubbing through an audio waveform, just hunting for that one perfect soundbite. It's frustrating. Well,
so you can see right there, it started from the beginning, but it kept playing through. So one quick tip right here, if you want the pad to stop playing at the moment that the highlight ends, there's a setting over here in QChop, this tab right here, and there's global playback mode. So you have two modes. There's play through and play to slice end. It was set to play through, but if I switch to play to slice end, it does exactly that. It's going to play the pad to the slice end. So if I play it again,
right? You're spending hours scrubbing through an audio waveform, just hunting for that one perfect soundbite.
So we heard it end right after bite right here. So we can go ahead and continue to do this to highlight words and click a pad, and just like that, it's assigned. So I can trigger this one.
Frustrating.
And it grabbed just it's frustrating right here. Now you can see in this example, it cut off the first word. So in order to quickly resolve that, we can go to the waveform tab, and now we can see it's already highlighted because it's the selected pad and it's zoomed into, focused in on that area. So we can just pull this out a little bit, and it looks like the word begins right here. So all you have to do is hover your mouse over to get this little handle drag icon on the ends of the highlights here, both start and end. You can adjust, and then you can just play it again.
It's frustrating.
And just like that, we fixed that one right there. So between highlighting and working in the waveform, you can dial in your chops exactly how you want before you take them out of the software. So that's great. I just did the first two sentences here, but let's say there's a quote somewhere in this video, and this video I've loaded up, I think is about a little over 6 minutes long. So we have a good amount of dialogue going on here. And I know there's a quote in here that talks about Quota Mini. So let me go ahead and just type in Quota Mini, and now we can see it's showing us where that's located here in the text by highlighting it. So now I can hit enter or return on my keyboard like this, and I can cycle through and find the quote I want. So if there's multiple instances of that word or phrase that you type in, it will cycle through all of them to find you the best one, or to find the one that you're looking for. So let's go ahead and grab this one right here. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this whole sentence and assign it to pad 3. Now we can see it's got the color matched highlight. I can come here and I can press the pad to play.
Mini is offering a fundamentally faster, more intuitive way to work with dialogue, and it's all built on.
So you can see it cut off a little bit of the first word, so I can just quickly adjust that with the mouse.
Quota Mini is offering a fundamentally faster, more intuitive way to work with dialogue, and it's all built on a foundation of.
So just like that, I can go in, I can manually find exactly what I'm looking for in here. So now once I have that, I can export it out into, there's multiple different ways that I can export the audio or video out now. So now we've done that, and this is a video file, by the way. So if I click it here, there's a video tab.
Quota Mini is offering a fundamentally faster, more intuitive.
It'll show me the video. I can also right click the video window and click pop out, and it pulls this resizable video window right here. So I can press it again and see it in that window as well.
Quota Mini is offering a fundamentally faster, more intuitive way to work with dialogue, and it's all built.
So I can simply switch over to other tabs, still be viewing the video with the pop-out window, and keep my workflow going. But now let's say we want to get these chops out of the software. So there's a couple different ways we can do it. We can drag these out, and you can drag them directly into your DAW, your video editing software, your Finder, your desktop, whatever accepts a WAV file or an MP4 file. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that real quick. I'm going to grab my downloads folder right here, and I'm just going to drag them here for example. And let's take pad 3 and drag it out right now.
Quota Mini is offering a fundamentally faster. Quota Mini is offering a fundamentally faster.
So just by dragging out, it dragged out P4 file. If I hold shift on my keyboard, and this only works with video, otherwise it's going to just drag wave by default regardless of the modifier key here. But if I hold shift and then drag, it'll drag out a wave. So let's try that.
Quota Mini is offering a fundamentally.
So now you can see we have the same file named exactly the same way, just ending in .wav. So you can see that there is a file naming convention going on here, and the way it works is it names it after the project name. So right now we're just working in an untitled project. We haven't saved this project yet. So let's go ahead and save this real quick and call it Q Mini Demo. So now we can see the name up here, Q Mini Demo. Let me pull this out a little bit. Now you can see the full name. So you can see it says 03 Quota Mini is offer. And so what that's doing is it's putting the project name, the pad number, and the first few words out of the dialog that's assigned to that pad in the name of the file. So the more pads you drag out, it's going to have a different number, and it's going to have a different name from the dialog. So if I grab pad 2, it drags it out. And now that you see that we named it Q Mini Demo, it named the file Q Mini Demo 02. It's frustrating.mp4. So it took the text and put it into the file name, which is really handy when you're browsing through tons of files to find that one quote you remember. It's like, oh, that was in the quote. Let me grab that one when you're just visually browsing your files. So this works. You can drag it out to anything that can accept a WAV or MP4 file. But let's say we have a whole bunch of pads and we want to export them all out at once. We can export a whole kit, but let me show you the QChop feature before we export a kit. So I'm just going to unassign these real quick, and then I'm going to run QChop. So we have Smart 16 selected by default, which means it's going to assign 16 pads. It's going to go through the text and listen to the audio and find what it thinks are important moments or quotes or phrases out of it. It's not a perfect science. It's more meant of just as a starter. It's not meant to replace your creativity or find the absolute best quote. It's in early stages of development with the QChop, so just think of it as something to help get you started. So you have pads loaded up and you can just start triggering away and find, oh, hey, there's a good part in here, because you can always come in and right click unassign and pull exactly what you want from it. But for example, let me just reassign something there real quick. So let's just say I take part of that sentence and assign it there. So now we got 16 pads. So we can export a kit by going up to File, Export Kit. And now when you're working with video, it's going to pop up with this window asking if you want it in a WAV file, an MP4 file, or both. So we're going to do both for this example. And from this point, it's going to ask you where you want to save it. So we'll just save it to the downloads folder as well. And then we'll see it begins exporting WAV and MP4. So we'll just give this a second. We can see that it's created the folder over here. And boom, just like that, it's done. Let's go ahead and take a look at the folder. And let me separate by kind here. So we have MP4s and WAVs. So you can see they're numbered 1 through 16, just like the pads. And you can see they all have unique names. And the MP4 and WAV files both have your matching twin, basically, of the MP4 version and the WAV only version. So now I can simply click on one of these and
the real magic here is just how simple the workflow is. Well, the real magic
and just play it. And FYI, my audio isn't set up to play the video from here, but it played the audio along with the video just in case you're wondering there. All right, so I think that about sums up the main workflow with Quota Mini. But let's dive into the features and details a little further. So I touched on QChop a bit, but let's talk about this a little more deeply. There are a few different QChop modes, and all of these modes allow you to basically assign whatever number is here, like Smart 64, that'll assign 64 pads. So if I run that, and I have this bank slider right here that goes through banks alphabetically. So we have A, B, C, and D. You can see the numbers change each time I switch a bank, and we have 64 pads assigned here. We can keep moving here, and by default, when you're in this 4x4 grid, you have banks A through H, or 8 total banks of 16 for 128 pads, but you can simply add more banks and keep going as much as you want. There's no limit to the amount of banks that you can add here, so you can essentially have an unlimited amount of samples assigned. There's also a all segments feature in here. When you run this, it's going to go through and try to capture every sentence or segment rather within the dialogue. So it's a more complete, this mode is good if you're working with a really long form video or audio where there's tons of dialogue and you really want to separate it down into hundreds or even thousands of clips. You can run all segments and it will continue creating its own banks automatically beyond the 128 pads. Also here in QChop, I went over the playback mode, but there's also a trigger mode. There's trigger and gated. So let me just show how these work real quick. So when I click trigger mode, I can just click a pad or press it on a MIDI controller and release it, and it will continue to play whatever the playback mode is. So if I have it set to play to slice end, it'll play to slice end, and if I have it set to play through, it will play through the entire source media until I press stop or it ends. So play to slice end, trigger mode is on.
Feeling, right?
So you can see it kept playing after I let go of pressing the mouse. But if I switch to gated, as soon as I let go of the mouse, it stops playing the pad. So if I hold it,
Feeling, right?
it keeps playing until the end, whatever the playback mode is here. So play to slice end in that instance. So that works with MIDI as well. So if I'm over here,
Who know the
just like so. So we've pretty much run through the QChop tab here. Let me briefly go over all the tabs here. So we went through QChop. I showed you the video tab, which just displays the video and also gives you the option to pop it out and show it on screen separately. So let's just keep that out there for now. But going back here to the waveform tab, so there's a lot of features on here. So right here is where we can load the media or import URL. You can see when I click there and onto the file name, we can actually import another one or load another one. There's also a folder here that pulls up the load media as well, just for redundancy. And then we have zoom in, zoom out, focus, and fit. So focus is going to focus in on whatever pad is currently selected. You can see that by this green border here. And this highlight green is going to vary based on what theme you're using. So when I click focus, it focuses in on that yellow pad there. When I click fit, it zooms out all the way so you can see the entire waveform and then quickly move over to another section as needed. And then here in the waveform itself, you can use your mouse and hover your cursor over an area that you want to zoom into and simply use your mouse wheel to zoom in or zoom out. And also if you hold command and use it, you can zoom the amplitude. So this is for visuals only. It doesn't affect the volume when you zoom the amplitude. And then next down here we have the transport bar, which you get rewind 5 seconds, play, stop, forward 5 seconds, and then you get a time display. Down here below, you get that same transport bar duplicated, just so you can also use these controls while working in a different window. Then we went over the video tab. Next is the browser tab right here. So this is your browser right here, and I know it's kind of small and compact here, but we have 3 sections. So over here on the left is where we put our root folders, and this is totally customizable. You choose the folders you want to add here by clicking this button up here, and you can select a folder and click open, And now we have that folder there selected. If we want to remove it, we just make sure it's highlighted down here and click remove. Additionally, moving on to the middle panel, this shows us the contents of the folder that we have selected in this pane over here. So you can see the name, the size, and there's a little scroll bar over here. We can choose, or we can see kind and date modified as well. And then over here, this right hand panel is the media pool, and this is where all of the media you have loaded into Quota Mini is loaded. So you can have multiple files loaded at once, and you can select between them, and through here that this will turn into a drop down menu. But additionally, in the media pool, you can see that it has this light blue color and this triangle symbol, but that's part of the tagging system. So you can see that all of these pads in the upper left corner have a little tag on them in that same color and symbol. So you can right click in the media pool to customize the tag and just click here. And now you can see we have all these different symbols we can choose from. So let's say we want to change it to a star and make it yellow and click apply. Now we see yellow and a star, and that's reflected down here on the pads. And you can also see that here in the waveform where it shows the file name as well. This is all just for easy identification when you're assigning pads, because you can have multiple files assigned in the media pool with different colored tags and symbols. And so having different pads associated with that media makes it easier to identify when you're working with multiple types of media. Additionally, you get the option to rerun transcription, which I'll get to in the next tab. You can also show in Finder to find exactly where the file is located in your file system, or you can remove from bin to remove it from the media pool. There's also a refresh button up here you can click. For example, you recently added a file into this folder from your file system and it's not showing up. You can click refresh and it should appear. Next, let's move over to the transcript tab. And I showed you how to go through here and highlight and assign pads, as well as how to search in the text here. But now we have a button down here called transcript format. So this allows you to format the transcript a little bit to your own preference here. So let me clear these highlights real quick. You can do that by simply hitting undo until everything is cleared over here in the Q Chop tab. But moving back, so now we have, you click this open to expand it, and there's a few different options. You have paragraph mode. You can check this on, and now you can see it start separating into blocks or paragraphs. And there's a density slider along with it that changes the density of each paragraph. So if you slide it over to the left, it's at the least dense, and then it will incrementally move over all the way to the right to make each paragraph more dense. And so each increment is basically adding or subtracting sentences per paragraph. And then you have show timestamps. So this will show you a timestamp at the beginning of every paragraph. So if I change the density, you'll automatically see timestamps adjust and show to each paragraph. And then FYI, the show timestamps only works in paragraph mode. So if we turn paragraph mode off, show timestamps goes off with it. And then finally, we have the font size slider. So I know this is a really tiny box to work in. It's not really meant to read a book out of or read out of, but rather just find what you're looking for quickly. But in order to help make it a little easier to read and see what's being said, you can adjust the font size larger, or if you need to make it more scrollable and easier to navigate through, maybe find the different highlights, you can make the font smaller. So this just gives you an option to set it to your preference. And then also, if you right click in the source transcript box itself, you get the option to rerun transcription. We also had that option here in the media pool. So when I right click rerun transcription, we get this box that pops up and allows us to rerun it, and we can choose a different transcription model. So now here I'm going to briefly describe what the whisper models are and how they work. So these whisper transcription models are what are running the transcription on your computer. These are open source models that are made by OpenAI, and in my opinion, they are some of the most accurate transcription models out there. But it comes with 5 different options here, and as I had described earlier in the video briefly, I think we have tiny through large. So you get tiny is going to be, you can see it has a rough time estimate here of how long it's going to take to run that model. Tiny is fast, but it's the least accurate. And then it just kind of ranges between this, with large being the most accurate, but it's going to take a lot longer. Now, these time estimates are really rough time estimates in my experience to run these models on my computer, and I'm running a Mac Studio with an M1 Max chip with 32 gigabytes of RAM. So if you're working with it, so I have a good amount of power to run these models, and just in my experience, these models only take about a third of that time of these estimates, what they usually say. So just keep that in mind. If you're running with less powerful hardware, then these model estimates may be a little more accurate, but this just gives you an estimate of how long those take to run. And then here in the rerun transcription menu, we also get the option to manually edit the transcript. So it gives you this box in here, and you can change the spelling in here however you wish. And you can click Save Manual Edits and Resync Timing. So you just want to make sure if you make any edits in here, check this box here. And then this box also comes checked by default, which is Improve Timing Accuracy, which we recommend. And you can run this even if you don't change the whisper model, and you could have it run the same model. Basically, it's going to just do a second pass, making sure that the timing of the highlights and the actual audio and when it's being spoken is tight and accurate. So if you ever run into any issues with you highlight a sentence and it seems slightly off, or something that's happening frequently, you can come in here and run this. You don't even need to change the model, and it will improve the timing accuracy. And then also, obviously, say you start off running your media in tiny, and you're just doing that to get your workflow going, but you realize the transcription isn't very accurate. You can come in here and select a larger model to tighten it up and get it better how you want. And it basically is just going to totally depend on your workflow and what your goal is with using the software. So if you must need super accurate transcription in the text, then small, medium, or large are going to be your best bets. And FYI, when you download Quota Mini, it comes included with tiny, base, and small models in the box. But when you'll see that medium and large here on mine show a check next to it, and this check is just indicating that they're downloaded and installed into the software. When you download the software, you'll see it saying not downloaded, will download on first run. So if you come here to rerun transcription and you see medium and you check that, and then you go to rerun transcription, it'll pop up with a dialog box saying that it is downloading, and then it'll say download complete. You'll click OK, and then it will start the transcription from there. It's a pretty simple process. Same thing with the large model, and that's because the models themselves can get kind of big. For example, the full installer with tiny, base, and small included is 1.5 gigabytes. But if you want to add in medium, then that is its own 1.5 gigabytes to take up on your disk. And then large is nearly 3 gigabytes at 2.9 gigabytes. So that makes the total of Quota Mini with all 5 models installed take up about 6 gigabytes on your system. So I left this up to you to keep it lightweight. For me, working with base or small is more than adequate for most tasks, but sometimes they might not get all the words right, and medium and large are much more accurate, but at the cost of space and time requirements. So just keep that in mind when you're working with these models. But one of the big benefits to using these models is they're all running locally on your computer. They're not going to be sending any data back to any servers or anything like that. They're open source and they run locally on your computer. So other than when you may need to download these just to get them onto your system, they're not transmitting any data to any servers. And unlike pretty much any other transcription software out there, you're not given a quota, so to speak, of a certain amount of minutes or a subscription fee or credits that you're going to run out of just by transcribing audio. You can run thousands of hours through all on your local system, and you're just paying one price one time for Quota Mini. and you own it forever. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about how long these may take and what your purpose is for using them. But for me as a music producer and trying to get those quotes out and sample them, saves me a ton of time. All right, so I think I've gone through most of the features there. I'm going to show you what the context menu on the pads, and then we'll walk through the menus up here and also set up MIDI I haven't even touched yet. So let me run QChop real quick on a Smart 16. All right, so we got 16 pads loaded. If I right click on one of these, we get all these options here. You can play, stop, you can change the color of the pad, you can change the playback mode individually. You can also change the trigger mode individually. If not, they're just defaulted to use global, which is up here in the QChop mode as I've described already. You can also focus in waveform as well. If you're having trouble with it not focusing in on the waveform, that's just another failsafe. There's also a trim menu, and this is just another way that you can trim the pad instead of doing it here in the main waveform view. It gives its own little window, and you get the option to type in the start and end times down to the millisecond. And you can zoom in and zoom out, focus, play, and stop all the same as you can there. It's just another fail-safe feature, essentially. And then you also have MIDI learn, which you can do that individually, or you can do it through here in MIDI mappings, which is the preferred method. You can also, instead of dragging out, you can also export pad wave or export pad video clip, and you can reveal it in the Finder where it's temporarily held at as well. That's good for troubleshooting purposes. And then you can unassign. So that's the context menu of the pads when they're assigned. If it's not assigned, you only get MIDI learn. So now let's go through the top menu here. And when you click on Quota Mini, we have preferences, and this is where you select your default whisper model here. So the software should ship with it set at bass, which is a nice balance of speed and accuracy for most tasks. And then you have MIDI focus and waveform focus. These both do the same thing, and just dependent. So waveform focus is dealing with mouse clicks, and MIDI focus is dealing with when you're hitting the pad. So with these checked on, when I press a pad on here, we can see that it focuses in on the waveform on that. You can turn that off if you don't want that focusing in on the waveform. Maybe you want it zoomed out and you just want to be pressing on the pads here. That's what you would do to check it off. So waveform focus is when you're doing it with the mouse, and turning these off when you're using MIDI can also be helpful because sometimes it overwhelms the system if you're mashing on the pads and the screen is constantly switching to the highlighted pad when you don't need it to. So that's the purpose of those two check boxes. And then slice triggering. This is actually a feature I need to take out of here. It's not really applicable anymore, but this was something to help reduce latency, but it no longer applies, so just ignore that feature. It'll be taken out in a future update. And then next we have pad drag export, and I didn't explain this earlier, but the way this works is swap shift pad behavior for pad drag, and this is for video pads only. So earlier when we dragged these pads out into the Finder window here, by default when we're working with a video file, you can drag out two options of MP4 or WAV, and you have to hold shift to drag out a WAV file in this instance. But if you have this swapped, you have to hold shift to drag out an MP4 instead. This isn't applicable to audio only pads. If you just have audio loaded, it's only going to drag out a WAV file whether you have shift held or not. And this is just swapping that behavior. So you can still do it with both. It just depends on your workflow and what you're doing more often and how you prefer to work. Next up, we got audio output device. And this is where you select your sound card you're going to hear the audio out of. So it just shows you all your sound cards on your system and you set it up through there. Next, we got the file menu, and I showed you how to save a project, but we have the whole project system here. And now the project system is a little basic, but you have the ability to save projects so you can open them later if needed. So we saved this project earlier at the beginning. You can see right now that it has an asterisk next to its name. That means that changes have been made since it was last saved, so we can save it again and that asterisk will go away. So now that asterisk's gone. Let's say we want to open a project. We can click open, and this will pull up our projects folder. And each project is named after the project name and then a unique identifier. And then we can open that, and it just has a project.json file in it. So this saves all the settings, but it does not save the actual media that's loaded in. So you want to make sure that your media stays put wherever it was loaded at. Otherwise, if you delete it off your system and you try to open one of these projects later, that media will be missing. So just keep that in mind. But the project system is a little basic, just basically because this was meant to be more you grab your audio, you extract out what you need, and then move on. You can build up your entire kits, and then you can reference those from the future. But you also have the project system here intact, so if you want to work with projects and come back to them later, that method is here and available as well. So you can also start a new project, save a project as, rename project. You also get the ability to load media or import from a URL here. Another way you can load media is you can just drag it and drop it into the waveform, or through the browser you can drag and drop from here into the media pool. That's just many different ways you can get media into the software. And then we went over export kit. You can also export a transcript. And when you export a transcript, you can export it with the transcript format as well. So if I have this in paragraph mode and show timestamps on, when I go to File, Export Transcript, let's call it Test, and I'll save it to the Downloads folder. So now we can see it right here. And now we have our timestamps and our paragraph formatting just like we have set in here. And if we just leave it one big block, it just exports as one big block. Just a couple helpful tips there. Obviously, it's not going to capture the highlight because it's just a basic .txt file. That's just for the internal system while you're working with it in Quota Mini. And then moving on here, we have the view menu. So I haven't gone over this yet, but there's two different layouts. And this will make more sense when we get to MIDI controllers and setting up your MIDI. But layout 4x4, this is going to be your 16 pad mode, which is default. And then we also have an 8x8 grid, which is 64 pads. So we can switch to 8x8 grid, adjust this a little bit, and now you can see we have 64 pads here. So let me just switch to Smart 64 on the Q chop. All right, now we got 64 pads assigned. You can see them all here all at once. And this is really handy if you're using a 64 pad controller versus a 16 pad like I have right here. So you can also hit Command 4 to switch back to 4x4, or you can hit Command 8 to switch to 8x8. So got keyboard shortcuts for that as well. Pads, don't worry about that. That no longer is applicable. There is a custom theme system in here with over 30 pre-installed themes that you can select from here. So you can see right now I have this theme, this cool orange one, which actually doesn't ship with the first version, but I'm going to input this in the next update. I created this with the custom theme designer. So if you guys want to get this theme, these are my settings right here. So you can see all the hex code and you could just dial that in just like it is or create it how you want. With the custom theme designer, you can put in you can name it. You can go through here and it tells you all the different options of where the color is changing. And you also get this live preview option. So this is really helpful for understanding, oh, this is going to change this color and it does it this way. So if I select panel background, that's going to be the main color. And if I want to change that color, then I can do it with this color wheel and all that and click. Now we have a new color. We can change text just like that. And then you can click save, go back here to the themes. And now here is my custom theme right there. But there's all these other ones in here as well that are pre-installed. And it's a nice way to really build a vibe when you're working with different media. Maybe you're trying to get into a certain creative zone. I think colors always help for me. So I like having all these different colors here that I can select from to help build the vibe that I'm working in. So you can play around with the themes here, create your own. Lots of different cool themes in here. I'm probably going to tighten these up some. I feel like some are a little repetitive or not optimized for all of the text and buttons, but a lot of them are. So just mess around with the custom theme designer, create your own. Feel free to share them. I'd love to see some cool designs. And then next, let's get into MIDI mapping. This is my favorite part of the whole software. This is what really ties it in and makes the workflow, killer workflow for me. So you can see here, I got 2 MIDI controllers here on my screen. Let me make my screen a little bigger so you can see my MIDI controllers. I got a MIDI Fighter Spectra right here and a MIDI Fighter Twister, but you can map any MIDI controller you have. It doesn't have to be some sort of smart control surface, but I've added some cool features in here that really make even a very basic MIDI controller feel like it has smart features of a control surface. And let me get into that here by showing you. So when you go to the MIDI tab, we have 2 options here, MIDI ports and MIDI mappings. So MIDI mappings is where you're going to go to map your MIDI. But before you can do that, you need to make sure that the port is selected. So here we can see all of our MIDI ports or our MIDI controllers that the computer sees are connected right now. And the ones with check marks next to them are the ones that are active in the software. So I'm just going to do this for example. You can see I have the Spectra right here. It is currently plugged in and active, but I'm going to go ahead and unplug, and I'm going to rescan MIDI ports, show it again, and now MIDI Fighter Spectra is gone. But now if I go ahead and plug it back in, let it power back on, I can rescan MIDI ports again, and there it is, and it's even checked again. So if I were to select that like that, it will unassign or uncheck it, making it not active with the software. So let's make sure it's active. All right, so MIDI Fighter Twister and MIDI Fighter Spectra are assigned. So let's go to MIDI mappings, and here you get options of assigning MIDI control. So there's 3 main categories here. You get your transport controls, your global parameters, and your pads. So transport is going to be stuff like play, stop, rewind, forward, focus, and fit. And then these controls are where I use heavily, the global parameters. So you have active pad start and active pad end. So if I want to demonstrate this here, let me just have pad 1 selected here, which it's already selected. And then I have active pad start mapped here, active pad end here. So watch this. So just like this, I'm going ahead and adjusting the start time of the pad. I let go. And now it bounced back to the tab that I was already working in. So I can adjust the endpoint a little bit and let go. Now it's back to the tab I was working in. So I don't even need to make sure, let me grab my mouse and see where I was at working on that. You don't have to jump back over to the waveform tab just to do this or to see what you're doing. So I designed this. You could be working in any tab and be like, oh, wait. That sounds a little off. I need to adjust the start time. So you just come in here, adjust it, look at the screen. It's already focusing in on that. And then you can be right back to the tab you were working in. These controls right here are going to control wave zoom horizontal and wave zoom vertical. So horizontal, vertical, just like that. And then also with the active pad start time, that's going to be the active pad. So right now I have pad 1 selected, but let's say I select pad 5. Now I'm adjusting the start time of pad 5. Pad 10. Now I'm adjusting the start time of that. And I don't have to have it mapped to a million different MIDI controls just to adjust the parameter for each pad. And then coming here to the pads, we have actually bank selector. That's this slider right here. So I have this assigned right here, and I can just move through the banks like this, and then say I want to trigger something in bank C. I just hit pad 1, and now I'm hitting pad 33. It's mapped just the same. It's just whatever the active bank you're in is what the MIDI controller 16 pads are going to control here. So we go here to the pads menu, and you're going to see 2 different modes, 16 pad mode and 64 pad mode. So that's going to correlate with the 4x4 and 8x8 grids, and whether you're using a 16 pad controller or if you're using a 64 pad controller like a launch pad. Basically, the idea is 16 pad mode has 16 pads you can assign, and you assign each one time to one control, and then you can adjust which actual pad you're using by the bank slider. And then 64 pad mode has 64 pads to assign. You assign them once, you save and close, And then that's it. And then next time you open the software, you open a different project. You don't have to worry about mapping any controls. You don't need to worry about saving a template. It is just saved with the software. Every time you open it, it will remember the controls that you set. And if you ever want to go in and change them, you can change them, add more controls, but they stay set for good once you use them. So there's no need for any sort of smart control surface or anything. It's all built into the software here to work with even the most basic MIDI controllers. So to me, that saves a ton of time with editing. This is my preferred method of, let me assign my pads, and then I can fine tune them with the start and end times on the knobs here. And then I can export out and then work in my DAW or my video editing software. So basically that's Quota Mini in a nutshell. And just one other thing, we have the help menu up here. You can search. There's a very small getting started little instructional here, but I advise you refer to the user manual, which is included in the DMG installer. It's only like 18 pages long, but it goes pretty in depth of all the different features. So if you need to refer to, wait, what is this feature supposed to do? You can go back to the user manual. It'll tell you all the details, and you can always reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to help. If you have any questions, there's also keyboard shortcut reference right here. And then you also have where you can enter or view your license right here. I'm not going to pull it up to show my license, but you can also activate the free 3-day trial there, and you can deactivate your license if you ever need to, because you can have Quota Mini installed on up to 3 machines. So say you have it installed on 3 machines and then you decide, oh, you got a new computer and you need to deactivate it from one, you simply go here and deactivate it. And then if you forget to do something like that, you can always reach out to support@getquota.app. We'll help you out with any issues or troubleshooting that you may have. And that's pretty much Quota Mini. I hope you guys find this tool as useful as I do. I didn't design this to make a quick buck or really any reason other than I couldn't find a solution for my problem of trying to sample dialogue. So I hope that this helps you out in that aspect, and stay tuned. We have a lot of updates coming. I got a lot of really cool features that are already built for future builds. They're just not quite ready to go, but I wanted to capture the basic idea that I started with, and that is Quota Mini. I have a bigger version of the software coming out called Quota Suite, and that's going to include a lot more performance type stuff. You're going to be able to record in. There's a mix bus, a lot of really cool features. I can't wait to share with y'all when they're ready. But right now, this is Quota Mini, and it's the dialogue sampling utility. So I just want to thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Feel free to subscribe. Every subscription counts. Share this video with someone you might know who might be interested in Quota Mini. Feel free to give us a like if you liked this video, and drop down any comments, questions, concerns you have down in the comments. I'll be sure to answer you. And once again, my name's Jordan from Rare Data. I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to watch this video and learn about the software. Hopefully I answered all your questions, but if anything, just have a great day and thank you for watching. Peace.